The Extended Ambivalent Relationship of America versus Native Americans, documentary by Elizabeth Robles. Back when English settlers were first arriving to America, they arrived to what they call the very first colony, Jamestown. Native Americans, who were obviously already living there, were not happy about this, so they attacked them when they had just arrived to their land, which is also known as the Indian Jamestown Massacre of 1622. The English used this as an excuse to justify their actions and confiscate their land. Many believe that Native Americans had the right to attack since they arrived to their land with no consent, while others believe that they shouldn't have acted so savagely towards them and immediately, and that it was their fault for the colonists attacking and taking their land. From there, the Indians and the English had a very on and off conflicting relationship with each other, and for centuries fought many battles against each other, like the Pequot War in 1636, the Beaver Wars, which lasted from 1640 to 1701, the King Philip's War from 1675 to 1676, Queen Anne's War from 1702 to 1713, the French Indian War from 1754 to 1763, the Battle of Fallen Timbers from 1794, the Battle of the Tippecanoe in 1811, and the three Seminole Wars, which the first was from 1816 to 1818, the second was from 1835 to 1842, and the third was from 1855 to 1858. Although they had many battles, some problems were initiated unintentionally, like diseases that the English had brought over in their ships. And even though that the English suffered from these diseases as well, Native Americans had no such immunity to them, so for them it was a deadly issue and consequence, while for the English it was something that they could survive from much easier. Many believe that this gave the Indian tribes fair reasons to dislike the colonizers even more, considering that they should have never set foot on someone else's property while being unaware of the deadly outcome they were going to bring, while others believe that it wasn't their fault and the Indians should have received them with a friendly welcoming, and all of this could have been prevented and they could have come to good terms with each other. Some colonial leaders even believed this was a sign from God that they should have the right to the land by sending smallpox and other diseases against Indians. Others used this as an opportunity to get Native Americans into praying towns and Christianity. This led to the First Indian War in 1675, which lasted 14 months until 1676, and a treaty was signed in April 1678, ending all conflict. But throughout the colonial era, from 1607 to 1776, Indians and Americans had many battles and wars over land and arrangement issues. By the 1800s, Americans were becoming big on the belief of manifest destiny, which is the belief of being destined by God to spend throughly all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. This was a major factor for Americans' desire in gaining land and having control of it all. Not just that, but they also desired their rich land, especially after discovering gold in Georgia and North Carolina. Soon, President Andrew Jackson started trying to convince the government to pass down the Indian Removal Act. When the Indian tribes heard about this, the Cherokee tribe was the one to quickly initiate and demand an explanation and petitioned over this. Why should they be expelled from their lands when they no longer threatened white settlements and they already had an agreement with the government over land division? They intended to fight their hardest and not stop trying until they achieved what they wanted, and they figured out many ways to try to do it. The Cherokees first hired William Wirt to take their case to the Supreme Court, which was the Cherokee Nation versus Georgia trial. He argued that they constituted an independent nation and had been so regarded by the United States in its many treaties with them. And not surprising, it got rejected on March 3rd of 1832. Soon the court case Worcester versus Georgia took place, in which Samuel Worcester was a rebel and broke the law that prohibited any white person to live among Indian land. He was against the relocation of natives and believed that they should have a distant political community living in Georgia. Samuel Worcester, the Cherokees, and soon John Marshall all believed that United States laws should not apply to Indians because they considered them their own nation, and they found these laws unconstitutional. They believed that no state itself should pass any laws controlling any Native American tribe, especially like how the governor of Georgia, George Rockingham Gilmer, wanted the Cherokees out of the state and prohibited any white man from entering Indian land without a license from the state. But George Rockingham and President Andrew Jackson both ignored the fact that only the Supreme Court should make laws and decisions regarding Native Americans. Georgia and Jackson insisted and continued to lean on getting the Cherokees removed. And soon enough, they got what they wanted, and Congress passed the Indian Removal Act on March 28th, even though not all members of Congress supported the Indian Removal Act. Many people believed the government failed and violated both their power and the Supreme Court rulings, especially since these tribes and the U.S. government already had passed treaties over land regulations as well as the Cherokee Constitution. And when President Jackson got confronted about these treaties and these constitutions, he denied that they ever existed. He said that this so-called constitution provided for an election in 1832 and it had not been held. For the government to do this so unexpectedly for their convenience, it only made the U.S. government look foolish and selfish, while for other white settlers agreeing with Jackson, they believed that the Indian tribes had to be removed because they didn't fit in with their style of living, and they were just a big obstacle towards manifest destiny and America becoming a big successful country. Soon in 1831, the 5 civilized tribes of Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Ponca nations were forced out of their homeland, where about 4,000 Cherokees lost their lives, and with the march of about 1,200 miles from Georgia to Indian Territory. Many died from whooping cough, typhus, dysentery, cholera, starvation, before even reaching their destination. By the middle of June 1838, the general in charge of the George militia proudly reported that not a single Cherokee remained in the state, except as prisoners in the stockade. And although the Cherokees were robbed and cheated by contractors, lawyers, agents, speculators, many do not blame Jackson for this horrifying event, since he was no longer in office when the Trail of Tears began. While many others do not agree with that excuse, since it was him in the first place who insisted to have them removed. With time, these Indian tribes that survived slowly started to adapt, rebuild, and construct their own towns and come together. Although this historical event benefited America's economy in the long run by making their economy richer and stronger and opening up more land for white settlers, it also left a broken bond between Americans and the Indians. And this is how some natives describe their living conditions of this time period.
We actually don't believe in the word Native American because Native American, it also has the word American in it.
They took everything from us. America's built on stolen lands. America is a stolen country.
We used to live with everything, and now we're on these little reservations and we're all clumped together, and we shouldn't be like that.
Like non-natives see us as these historic people with loincloth and headdress.
Like animals, they monitor our blood quantum. We're the only, besides dogs and horses, I don't know of any other animal that they monitor.
The media often portrays us as like these sad, like poverty-stricken people.
There isn't that focus on who we are today.
We live on the poorest county in America. It's poverty-stricken, but just because we live in poverty don't mean we're poor.
Do you feel American?
Nah, I've always been taught we were Indian. We were Lakota first before we were anything else, before we were Christian, before we were...
This event will always be remembered as something corrupt, unconstitutional, and selfish of the U.S. government. It also destroyed any forever peaceful connections and relationships between natives and America, and it helped increase America's economic with the gold discovered.